مساء الخير. مرحبا بكم في الاستقرار القوي. أساسيات الرفاهية للوافدين الجدد.
晚上好，欢迎来到坚强安定新移民的幸福要素。
शुभ संध्या। बसने में आपका स्वागत है। मजबूत नवागंतुकों के लिए कल्याण आवश्यक है।
Hello, and welcome to Thrive Together, a mental wellness series across diverse journeys. Today, we are looking at settling strong, well-being essentials for newcomers. This session was originally broadcasted live on Thursday, February 1st, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And myself, I'm Megan Hunter. I was the host. I am a founder and social innovator at Pecan Prairie Health Promotion. I have a background as a psychological health and safety advisor and trainer, registered kinesiologist, teacher, and I'm currently working on a master's in health promotion at the University of Alberta School of Public Health, focusing on COVID and its impact on mental health in the workplace. So welcome. Thank you for being here today. We are going to cover the essentials on how to care for ourselves as newcomers to Canada. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the land that we are on today. This is the traditional territory of the Kinankiaha and the Tonikiaki, or Montreal. It's a place that has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst First Nations. We recognize and respect that the traditional custodians of this land were not the people who are settled here now necessarily. And we understand the cultural impact, exchange, and stewardship that has kept this land beautiful for so long. We respect these traditions and welcome the reconciliation with the Indigenous communities. What reconciliation actually means to me is finding the histories and the stories about the people that we haven't heard before, the stories that have maybe been kept out of our traditional schools or regular conversations. Being newer to Canada means that this is another layer of learning or knowing that you are likely uncovering during this time. Reconciliation isn't something to be afraid of. It is something to embrace for all of us. So just as you may find yourself being new or newer to this beautiful country that we're living in, at one point, the people who are delivering this presentation to you, for the most part, were new or newer to this area as well. And we were led by the original peoples, the Indigenous communities, and they helped us survive and build Canada's what we know it today. So I encourage you to find curiosity in it. And I'm sure you'll join me in that curiosity turning into a true love and respect for the way that our lands have been cared for. Thought it would be kind of fun to start with a little video today. So welcome to Montreal Entrepreneurship and Employment Services.
مساء الخير.
Oops.
مرحبا بكم في الاستقرار.
Sorry, you gotta love technology, right? You do something fun and it perks out on you here. So this session is brought to you by Montreal Employment and Entrepreneur Services, and it is funded by we're so thankful for our funders and grateful for them. The CHSSN and the Public Health Agency of Canada has made these sessions possible for you today, not only in their original delivery, but also in these recordings that are now available. Please be sure to check out the brochures that have links and some of the activities that we'll go through today. All right, so you might be asking, when we did this as a group, what were some of the things that we did as a group to have safety of our psychological health and well-being while we were together? First and foremost, it was to take care of yourself. So I encourage you to take a listen to this while you're walking, relaxing, maybe cooking, doing something you enjoy, and really use it as a bit of time to just allow yourself to be given some information and sink into it. Yeah, get comfortable. We did a group level disclosure when we did the group session, meaning any comments that we made. So if you make a comment on any sort of public site, think about how it adds to the group discussion or to the broader community when you're making that statement or comment. Please know that everyone's welcome. Your experience matters and it's true to you, and the experience of others is true to them. We hope to really share the respect for all, including yourself, throughout this session, and also if you come to any of our sessions live. A quick trigger warning, we will be talking about mental well-being or mental health. We're not all comfortable with the terms of mental health. Changes from culture to culture, generation, makes it a little bit different in the ways that we approach talking about mental health. For some people, they've never spoken about it. Others feel like, oh, old hat, easy peasy. But I just want to make you aware that it's okay if some of this information feels a little hard, and to really go back to that first piece on how to care for yourself is to take care of you if you find yourself emotionally triggered by anything that is said today. So settling strong. What are we going to cover today? Oh, well, we've got a lot of really good things for you. So we've got a couple of well-being essentials that we'll talk about today. I'll do a quick introduction of myself. We'll talk about what is mental well-being and a couple of tools for how to settle strong, including the emotional cycles of change, community, where am I, and rest, and then how to keep this journey going. Sound good? I thought so. I'm excited to be here. And who am I? I'm Megan. I am a second generational Scottish settler on my dad's side, and I'm a fifth generation Scottish settler on my mother's side. I'm actually fifth generation Edmontonian. So I'm coming to you today from Alberta, which is out in the west, and Treaty 6 territory is where I was born and raised. And I currently live in Treaty 7, which is Calgary. Little known fact about me is I have lived in two other countries aside from Canada. One was Switzerland and the other was the United States of America. So I have indeed immigrated to a place. I have not successfully immigrated to another place, which is an interesting part of my story. So I do understand some of the challenges in arriving somewhere where maybe the language isn't your first language, the customs and rules are different. And even if the language is your first language, like my experience moving to California, it's a very different culture and community. So there's a lot that we have to adjust to when it comes to our, just the way that we approach life when we're in a new place. So it's really important that we can take care of ourselves during that time of change. All right. So I live in Calgary. Edmonton will always be my home. And my question to you is, what place will always be your home? When we did this live, we had a myriad of answers. And what I thought was so beautiful was how many people who had just arrived in Montreal or recently arrived in Quebec call Montreal or wherever they were in Quebec home. They already feel at home. And I think that that is beautiful. It speaks to the welcoming nature of the community and even the role that yes plays in the lives of those who are just arriving and looking for where to start. So if you're not involved in the yes community, I encourage you to reach out. They are fantastic. They have so many services and they just want to connect you with other amazing people. All right. So this was my Where Are You From activity that we did live. And we just put flags or dots on the map as to where we are from. What I thought was hilarious is that this was the best picture I could find of the world. Can you believe it? I think we need to do better in the Creative Commons, or if you know of a better map, please send it to me because I would love to upgrade this. This is cute, but more for my son's room, more so than a presentation. Anyhow, we do know that we have beavers and buffalo and porcupine and eagles and moose here in Canada and the narwhal. So, I mean, that's wonderful. Anyway, the world is a big place. It's also a connected place. And there are certain regions in the world that draw people in. And I feel like Canada is one of those places. It has a promise of hope, freedom, opportunity. And usually when people move to Canada, they want everyone they know to come be there with them, because our communities are so important. But also when we feel safe and free and as though we can get our needs met, we want others in our lives to feel that way too. So I do feel that that's a lot of gratitude to the culture that Canada offers to other people. So you're now part of that. So thank you. And you are here. I want you to take a moment to reflect. How long have you been in Canada? Was Canada or Quebec the plan? I know for my ancestors, Alberta was the plan. They were offered free land in Alberta in the turn of the century of the 1900s, which is interesting to me. Could you imagine arriving without infrastructure in Alberta when it gets minus 50 in the winter? I don't understand how they did it, but I mean, I'm grateful to be here today. So was Canada the plan? Was Quebec the plan? What's new about being here? What's fun and delightful about being here? What's hard, or maybe harder than it was at home, or where you used to call home, but you call home here now? These questions are really important because oftentimes when we're in the middle of change or we've made a recent change, we're just surviving and we forget about the foundational questions that really impact us day to day and impact our mental health or mental well-being. So that's really my next question to you is, what does mental health mean to you, or mental well-being? Is it something you've spoken about? Is it something you're curious about or comfortable talking about? One of our funders, the Public Health Agency of Canada, defines mental health as the capacity of each of us to think, feel, and act in ways that enhance our ability to enjoy life and deal with the challenges that we face. It's a positive sense of emotional and spiritual well-being that respects the importance of culture, equity, social justice, interconnections, and personal dignity. I mean, wow, could we be any more clear about what we all hope to live with? Being able to embrace our culture, have equity, social justice, and strong interpersonal connections. I think that's beautiful, and dignity above all. So if that's mental health, I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions and feel free to ponder them, write them down, talk to a friend if you're listening to this with someone else. You can pause me at any time to explore your thoughts on any of this a little deeper. I want you to ask yourself, how do you talk about mental health? What words, conversations, ideas do you have or use or have witnessed other people talking about mental health? Have I spoken about mental health before? I know mental health has not always been a topic that has been popular in Canadian everyday culture. I would say it really started to come into conversation maybe 15, 20 years ago. And truly, we've had a shift in stigma since COVID-19. Mental health and mental well-being has risen to the forefront of important topics. So you might be asking yourself, is the topic of mental health normal in Canada? I believe we still have quite a bit of stigma. The pandemic, we know, shifted it. However, there's still varying comfort when it comes to talking about mental health. And that could be due to family culture, cultures we hold, religious beliefs, the communities we're in, our generation, our education. This all impacts how we talk about mental well-being and mental health. So I just want you to reflect on where you're at this moment. And then, of course, the question, what does it mean to be mentally well? What does that mean to you? When we did this session live, we went into a breakout room to discuss. So I'm going to challenge you to reach out to somebody to discuss, what is mental well-being? What does it mean to you? What does it mean here in Canada, in Montreal, in Quebec? So you can pause me, call a friend, and come back, or you can go through this session and do the call another time. But I definitely encourage you to have the conversation with somebody else. Because why not? So when it comes to settling strong and knowing that mental well-being does affect everything we do and is affected when we have a huge life change, such as moving countries or immigrating to somewhere new, I think it's important to recognize that not all of us move because we want to. Sometimes it's out of necessity because we're not safe in our homeland. Sometimes it's because we needed the change or the opportunity is stronger somewhere else. Perhaps it's family that drew you over to Canada and you don't feel like it was quite your choice, but was the choice you wanted to make. So the next couple of slides are some helpful tools that you can use to support you in settling strong and really feeling like you can address and support your mental well-being while you're figuring out what your new normal is here in Canada. Because of course, you're welcome here. Something to keep in mind is the emotional cycles of change. And I bring this up because sometimes we just make big choices in our lives and we just go for it. We jump in with 2 feet and, we're on an airplane. All of our stuff comes over on a ship, or maybe not. Maybe we came over in a ship. I don't know. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that we all go through an emotional cycle of change. And as I go through this, you may think, wow, this actually sounds a lot like the cycles of grief. Because when we make a big change like where we live, there are pieces that affect us to our absolute core and really shake up how we see the world. So that first stage is the uninformed optimism. Friends, I am going to Canada. I am packing up. Here I go. You arrive where you are and you have this sense of optimism. Things are new, they're different. You notice that the buildings look a certain way. The architecture in Quebec is like nothing else in Canada. It's truly a wonder and a splendor. It's gorgeous. So lucky. And then maybe after a week or two or a month or two, you start to get into this informed pessimism. You realize that, yeah, these are beautiful buildings, but they're old and not all of them have been upkept, which might not be the case, or it might be the case. You realize that it's hard to find the foods that you know to be a staple in your diet. You might find it difficult to get a doctor, to connect with people who speak English. You realize that, yes, English might be my second, third, fourth language, but French isn't one of my languages, and everyone here speaks French. These little pieces or big pieces might start to show up, and it will bring us down into the phase of the valley of despair. Now, some people will get into the valley of despair and go right back up to stage 1, and they're like, no, 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 everything's fine. I'm happy to be here. There's nothing wrong with it. Others will stay in that valley of despair, realizing that part of the process is seeing the negative and the positive of some place that you're living. And over time, recognizing that it gets better and better, and you become informed in an optimistic way instead of informed in a pessimistic way. Remember, when you first arrived, you had an uninformed optimism. It was just all going to be awesome. You've been told this is what you think. But the informed optimism is about your experience. When you connect with the community, you find your grocery store that you love, you realize that, oh my gosh, I can go shopping in this place that has my new favorite clothing brand. Or you realize that the arts environment in Quebec is like nothing else you've ever seen. And with that informed pessimism, we start to move into the next stage, which is success and fulfillment within the place that we are in. It's very hard to get to success and fulfillment without going through the valley of despair. The valley of despair is where we learn what we need, what we're missing, what we want, and it motivates us to find it eventually. It's okay to stay in that phase of valley of despair for a little bit. But something I want you to know about this cycle of change is that you don't have to go through it alone. And really, anybody who has moved anywhere goes through this cycle of change. There's no set time as to how long it takes. I wish it said week 1 to 3 and month 2 to 5, but the truth is we can slide one way or another on this scale or on this emotional cycle of change. We can go back and forth a few times. It could take us a couple years to really settle in somewhere. Heck, I moved from the capital city in Alberta to the biggest city in Alberta, and it's taken me years to feel at home here. Whereas I felt instantly at home in places across the ocean. So there is no rhyme or reason as to how it looks, or really it's all about your experience in that space. So keep this in mind if you're feeling a little hopeless, or if you're realizing, oh man, I am in this uninformed optimism. And it is entirely possible that I'm going to go through some pessimism and a valley of despair. So, all through this, I mentioned you do not have to be alone. Community for mental well being, building strong connections. This is huge. Many cultures outside of Canada are much better at community connection than we are here. I think there's weather, culture, individualism, our policies, the way that our society works keeps us a little bit more separate than other places. But I do believe that finding a community that you love, seeking out groups that share your interests, maybe a religion, uh, a cooking group, a volunteer group, even a job where you can find people who are like-minded or willing to connect with you. Organizations like Yes Montreal are a great place to find community and reach out. Start with your interests. Think of it as a new way to meet people. What do I like to do? There must be somebody else in the city who likes to do what I like to do. Where can I find them? Organizations like Yes Montreal can help you find them. They can connect you to communities that you are seeking out. And what's kind of fun about sessions like this is you've begun to make connections today. You have found Yes Montreal. There are probably other people listening to this right now. So you can find them. If you come to a session live, you'll notice that there'll be a ton of people in the chat and they start exchanging emails or social handles or clubs that they're a part of and invite you to be a part of too. So figure out where your people are. And once you do find people, how you make connections can look very different, but these are a couple of recommendations that I would like to share with you, is that to share stories with other people and get to know them and allow them to get to know you too. Remember that we're all curious beings. Remember that we all have different stories, and that's what makes us interesting. I know personally when I meet somebody who's moved to Canada from somewhere else, I want to know about the culture that you hold dear. I want to know why you chose Canada. I want to know what you like to do and what you feel might be missing in your world. I want to see if I can connect you there. So remember that people are interested, and notice when you're feeling isolated because that's when it's hardest to reach out. Hardest to reach out. And then collect resources that you trust from people that you trust, like Yes, employment and entrepreneurship. They have they have coaches that can support you finding the clubs and groups that you're looking for. Also, employment, entrepreneurship, and art. Oh my gosh, they help artists so much. They help people seeking employment so much. They also help people who are entrepreneurs so much. So definitely check them out. It's a beautiful way to connect into community of like-minded individuals. So I mentioned isolation. Isolation is a sign that we may need support. Our mental health, our mental well-being may be languishing. And what I mean when I say languishing is that you do not have to have a mental illness to have languishing mental health. Just like if you have a physical ailment, say you broke your leg, you could still feel well otherwise. Same goes with mental illness. I myself live with depression and anxiety, and there are days where my mental health is super great, and there are days where it's not. And we can have good, languishing, or thriving mental health regardless of our mental illness. Here's a couple of signs to watch out for that might indicate that your mental well-being needs some support. Eating or sleeping changes, so eating too much or too little, changes in your energy levels, feeling confused or on edge, believing things that are untrue, so making generalizations or thinking you know what other people think about you, and an inability to perform daily tasks. What I mean by that one is notice if it's difficult to brush your teeth or clean your house or do your laundry, not just because they might not be your favorite tasks, but really struggling to get the basics done. It may mean that you need some support. So on these notes were designed to be reminders to yourself. And these reminders are meant to uplift you. So I want you to think about a couple of sayings or memories or people or things that uplift your spirit that you could write on a sticky note or on a card or somewhere that you could put around your house to support your mental well-being when you're not feeling your best. For example, I might put, have you spent time with your bunny today, Megan? I have 4 bunnies. And just lying on the floor, having one of them hop around me is the most joyful. So I might put bunny time on one of those stickies. I might put, have you brushed your teeth? Are you sleepy? Are you tired? Have you had a good meal lately? Call a friend. Better yet, put that friend's name down there and their number so you can call them. I want you to create a couple of reminders that help you to reach out. Because when we feel isolated and when we notice some of these languishing mental health impacts, that's when it's hardest to think about what to do. So this is a preventative measure. Write down some steps you can take to help you step out of it. All right, so you can pause and do that right now, or you can come along to the next one with me. Diddle-oo. Another helpful tool that I've found, and that I found when I was immigrating, was figuring out where I was living, not physically, but in my head. Was I living in the past? Did I feel guilt or shame and regret of leaving my home country? Was I feeling sad and depressed because I felt lonely? Was I dwelling on things that happened that maybe it wasn't the smoothest process? Why did I leave? Was it a good situation that I left or one that was hard? And I just wish that my home would go back to the way it was so I could go back. And did I start over analyzing what was happening? If I'm stuck mentally in the future, it could be the fear of unknown. Will I ever find a job? Will I get the work visa I need? I could worry about what might happen. Am I going to be deported? That's probably not you, but there was a moment where I was detained because my visa for studenthood had lapsed before my work visa kicked in. So it was a bit of a worry at that time. Was I feeling anxious about what my life was going to look like or what was to come? And was I starting to think about what if situations? What if this wasn't the choice to make? What if I won't find the friends I want? What if I decide that I just want to leave and go home again? Or thinking the worst case scenario. When we live in the present, so when I would get into a state of thinking of the past or the future, I would try to pull myself back into a state of clarity, acceptance, joy of being, understanding, inner peace, and gratitude. And that was the present moment. So, for example, if I found myself dwelling on something negative that had happened, I could bring myself to a space of understanding by reminding myself that I made the choices I made for a reason. And it's okay if I'm not always 100% on them, but to trust the intuition I had to make the choices I wanted to make. And if I'm okay with that and then start thinking of the future and being anxious, what if I don't know what's going to happen? Coming back to that understanding that, hey, you know what? We live life one moment at a time, one day at a time. It's helpful to have a clear vision of what you want, but don't get lost in the details, especially the details that haven't happened yet. So I invite you to use this tool to help yourself when you're feeling stuck in the past or the future. To look at something like the gratitude that you have in the moment, the gratitude for the sparkling snow that might be new to you, or the maple syrup that is so delicious, or the beautiful architecture, the artist community. Bring yourself back to a place where you can find your own inner peace and your clarity and the joy of being someplace new that you've decided to be and you now call home. There's so much strength in that. It's also worth noting that we are not going to feel amazing 100% of the time. And even if we do get ourselves back into the present moment, we may not feel perfect, quote unquote. We may still be really processing some emotions. We just did a session on job seeking in Quebec. I really encourage you to take that session so you can learn a little bit more about a tool called the emotion wheel. and how to apply that to your life. Because all emotions really are welcome. It's how we process them that matter. All right, we're going to do a little activity called what do you want to keep and what do you want to leave? Because you do belong here. Sometimes we're weighed down by things that we have brought with us, whether it be a mindset, a way of thinking, a way of feeling, a script that goes on in our head. We may have brought things that no longer serve us. So you're going to take a moment. Look, I like how I'm just barking orders at you. You will take a moment. I would love to invite you to take a moment to think about what you want to keep and what you want to leave. So, for example, when I attempted to immigrate to Switzerland, which is the country I unsuccessfully immigrated to, things that I wanted to keep were the the pristineness of the way things were there. I loved the cheese. I loved the process. I loved that things were closed at 6 p.m. and then again on Sundays. I think you have that in Montreal too, which is brilliant. I also wanted to keep the activity level that was there. I could walk anywhere I wanted to, regardless if it was summer or winter. There was a lot of active transportation. And what I wanted to leave was the hustle bustle of sort of the individualistic society of at least Alberta. Alberta is a different culture than you'll find in Quebec and Montreal, which I'm sure you're aware of. Region to region, it's quite different. And that's something that I wanted to leave. When I did find myself back in Alberta, I committed to keeping what I loved about Switzerland, being the cheese, being as active as possible when I could be, thinking about ways that I could slow down and appreciate life differently than I did before I had left. And I guess what I wanted to leave behind from that experience was a feeling of not being welcome. I feel very welcome here back in Canada. And I would say it's not just because I was born here. I think it's because of the culture and the welcomeness that's here. So I want you to think about that from your perspective. What do you want to keep from the place that you moved from? What do you want to leave behind and start fresh and start new? Maybe it's groups of people, mindset. Maybe it's starting something new, leaving behind a fear that maybe you had before. So just take a moment to reflect on your list of what do I keep and what do I leave? You're welcome to pause the recording right now and come back. Or I welcome you to stay for the next couple of slides and then you can reflect. I just have a quick little video about Canada. It's another little humorous one. I hope you enjoy. And then we'll talk about Yes and some of the resources that they have to support you, and I'll give you some contact information. And then we'll wrap up. All right, so here's a little video for you, my dear friends. I hope you have a parka. I mean, who doesn't love a little humor about winter? You'll notice the weather is one of our favorite topics of conversation. So, bring that up if you're not sure what to talk about with a Canadian. They will entertain you for hours with their discussion about their experiences. So, speaking of experiences, let's move on to knowing that it's okay to ask for help. So here in Canada, we do not have universal mental health care yet. There are ways to access mental health care through your doctor, but also there are some resources that YES has pulled together for English mental health resources in Quebec. So be sure to seek that out on their website. Also, in the brochure that accompanies this session, there should be some information for you there as well. YES has a number of resources. They can connect you with community groups and employment, seeking advice, entrepreneurship, coaching, artist coaching. Also, they can connect you with some mental health resources as well. So reach out to YES. Here's their information. You can reach out to me. My website is in my name, which should be showing up here. But just know that you're not alone. Know that you have the resources and support from organizations such as YES Employment and Entrepreneurship, and which we are lucky enough to have the funding to provide information sessions like this, thanks to the CHSSN and the Public Health Agency of Canada. So reach out, get in touch. And just a reminder, there are some other tools that come up in this series that we're going through. So if you want to learn about the emotion wheel, cognitive distortions, the C's of centered self or rest, hop online and look at the rest of the series. There's some more tools you can add to your toolbox. So I just want to thank Montreal Employment Entrepreneurship for having me here today. And I'd like to thank you for listening, for being part of the session, and welcome. Thanks for being a part of the beautiful mosaic and fabric that is Canada. You belong here. Take care.